They say goodness is its own reward. But what if that reward comes wrapped in silence, loneliness, and misunderstanding? What if the world, in all its complexity, doesn't celebrate your kindness, but punishes it? Niccolo Machiavelli, the man often remembered for his cold realism, once hinted at a truth that most good-hearted people never want to face. To be good in a corrupt world is to invite suffering. His words were not a call to abandon morality, but an invitation to see human nature clearly, to protect oneself from being consumed by one's own virtue. Look around. The kind person often becomes the scapegoat. The honest one loses opportunities to the cunning. The selfless giver ends up drained by those who take without restraint. We live in a time that praises goodness in theory but rewards strategy in practice. And that's precisely what Machiavelli understood centuries ago. He didn't say to stop being good. He said, be good, but with eyes open, because unchecked goodness without wisdom becomes a form of self-destruction. It's not that morality is outdated. It's that morality without discernment becomes a weapon turned inward. This video isn't about turning dark. It's about understanding the quiet cost of being a good person in a world that often doesn't value it. Machiavelli believed that the truly wise individual, the prince, as he called him, must balance compassion with calculation. He must know when to show mercy and when to protect himself from the wolves. True power, he said, lies not in the appearance of virtue, but in mastering when and how to apply it. So today we explore what he really meant, the psychological cost of goodness, why it hurts, why it matters, and how to stay kind without becoming a casualty of your own heart. Number 1, goodness without boundaries breeds exploitation. Machiavelli's insight into human nature reveals a paradox many good-hearted people still face today. Goodness, when unguarded, invites exploitation. In the Discourses and the Prince, he noted that people often misuse virtue for personal gain. In modern psychological terms, this phenomenon is described as reciprocity imbalance, a situation where one person consistently gives more than they receive, believing kindness will naturally be reciprocated. But the truth is, without boundaries, kindness can become a silent invitation for manipulation. Studies in behavioral psychology show that people subconsciously test limits. When they realize someone's compassion isn't accompanied by assertiveness, they often, intentionally or not, begin to take advantage. This doesn't always come from malice. Sometimes it's simple conditioning. When kindness is always available and unconditional, the mind starts to treat it as an endless resource rather than a privilege. Machiavelli would argue that the truly wise individual must see this dynamic clearly. Virtue without discernment is like an unlocked treasure chest. It attracts more takers than protectors. In essence, the good are not destroyed by the wickedness of others, but by their own unchecked generosity. When kindness is used without measure, it drains energy, time, and emotional stability. Modern psychology echoes this, suggesting that empathy burnout often occurs not from helping too much, but from helping without boundaries. The antidote is not to harden the heart, but to train it, to practice intelligent kindness. Intelligent kindness is strategic compassion. It's the art of giving without becoming dependent on the approval or gratitude of others. It requires emotional intelligence, the ability to read intentions, recognize manipulation, and act from wisdom rather than guilt. In Machiavellian terms, it's about understanding the political nature of human interaction, where power, perception, and reciprocity constantly intertwine. A truly kind person, therefore, must also be discerning. Just as a skilled gardener prunes to preserve growth, a wise soul sets limits to protect their light. Machiavelli's lesson remains timeless. The world does not merely reward goodness, it rewards balanced goodness. To be kind without awareness is to invite exhaustion. To be kind with insight is to command respect. So the next time you give with clarity. Let your kindness be your strength, not your weakness. For in a world quick to take advantage of virtue, the most powerful act of love is knowing where to draw the line. Number 2, the naivete trap. Good people often assume that others think, feel, and act as they do. They believe kindness inspires kindness, honesty earns honesty, and loyalty guarantees loyalty. But Machiavelli, the Renaissance political thinker, often misunderstood as purely ruthless, warned against such assumptions. He wrote, "Men forget the death of their fathers sooner than the loss of their inheritance." Beneath this chilling observation lies a profound truth about human nature, that self-interest often outweighs morality. People may grieve a loved one, but the loss of wealth, status, or advantage can shake them more deeply because it touches their sense of survival. Machiavelli wasn't promoting cruelty, he was exposing the uncomfortable reality that emotion and ethics are often secondary to personal benefit in the minds of many. Psychologically, this insight aligns with what modern behavioral economics calls loss aversion. The idea that people feel the pain of losing something far more intensely than the pleasure of gaining it. This explains why betrayal, envy, and manipulation often spring from fear of loss, whether it's power, reputation, or resources. For good-hearted people, this truth can feel unsettling. Yet it's not a call to abandon virtue, it's a reminder to anchor goodness in awareness, not naivety. When you understand that not everyone values integrity the way you do, you begin to act wisely, not blindly. You learn to give without expectation, to trust with discernment, and to protect your energy from those who see kindness as a weakness rather than a strength. Machiavelli believed that moral purity without strategic awareness makes one vulnerable. In modern terms, psychologists might call it empathic overextension, when compassion turns self-destructive because boundaries are absent. The most balanced individuals are those who combine empathy with emotional intelligence, who can read motives without resentment and help others without losing themselves. True goodness, therefore, is not about pleasing everyone. It's about staying true to your principles while seeing reality as it is. To protect your goodness, you must accept that not everyone operates from the same moral compass. Some are guided by conscience, others by convenience. Knowing this truth doesn't make you cynical. It makes you wise. It teaches you to walk with open eyes, kind hands, and a guarded heart, offering light without allowing the darkness of others to dim your own. Number 3, the mask of morality. In The Prince, Machiavelli unveils a timeless psychological truth. Appearing virtuous often matters more than truly being virtuous. This statement may sound cynical, but it reflects a sharp understanding of human behavior and perception. In any society, image and reputation shape power. People are drawn not to what is real, but to what seems admirable. Psychologically, this aligns with what modern scholars call impression management theory, a concept introduced by sociologist Irving Goffman. It describes how individuals carefully control how others perceive them, much like actors performing roles on a stage. In politics, business, and even relationships, people instinctively manage their image, signaling traits like honesty, strength, or humility to gain trust and influence, even if those traits are only partially true. The tragedy, however, is that genuinely good people often underestimate this dynamic. They assume authenticity alone guarantees respect or reward, but history and psychology suggest otherwise. Studies in social cognition reveal that people rely heavily on first impressions and visual cues to make judgments, often ignoring deeper character over superficial charm. This explains why manipulative leaders or charismatic deceivers sometimes rise faster than the truly virtuous. Their mastery of perception becomes their weapon. In contrast, honest individuals may suffer because they refuse to perform. They mistake sincerity for strategy and assume truth will naturally prevail. It rarely does. Machiavelli was not glorifying deceit. He was diagnosing reality. He saw that morality without strategy leaves one defenseless in a world ruled by appearances. To survive and thrive, one must understand how others see. This doesn't mean abandoning virtue, but learning to pair integrity with intelligence. Psychological research even supports this. Emotional intelligence, which involves understanding and managing social perceptions, strongly predicts success and influence. The wise person, then, learns to embody genuine virtue while also being aware of how it is communicated. In essence, Machiavelli's insight reminds us that survival often requires subtle performance. The good suffer not because they are wrong, but because they assume the world rewards transparency. It doesn't. The world rewards perception. And in that paradox lies the art of balance, to be inwardly moral, but outwardly strategic, to master both substance and show. Those who do, Machiavelli would argue, are the few who rise above both naivety and deceit, walking the narrow path between virtue and power. Number 4, emotional exhaustion and compassion, fatigue. From a modern psychological perspective, excessive empathy, though often seen as a virtue, can become emotionally hazardous when left unchecked. Empathy allows us to feel what others feel, bridging the emotional gap between human experiences. However, when this sensitivity turns into over-identification, the line between compassion and self-sacrifice begins to blur. Psychologists call this empathic distress, a state where one absorbs another's pain so deeply that it becomes their own. Over time, this internalized suffering leads to emotional exhaustion, anxiety, guilt, and even a sense of numbness, a phenomenon commonly known as compassion fatigue. Studies in caregiving professions, such as nursing and therapy, reveal that constant emotional output without proper replenishment significantly increases the risk of burnout and detachment. The brain, particularly the anterior insula and anterior cingulate cortex, regions linked with emotional resonance, can become overstimulated, depleting one's psychological reserves. Niccolò Machiavelli, though not a psychologist, intuitively grasped this truth centuries ago. His counsel was simple yet profound. Empathy must be governed, not given without discretion. In The Prince, Machiavelli warned that unchecked compassion can make one vulnerable in a world where self-interest often rules. From a psychological standpoint, this advice mirrors modern theories of emotional boundaries, the ability to care deeply while maintaining a sense of self. Without such boundaries, empathy turns parasitic. It consumes rather than connects. Healthy compassion, therefore, requires balance. It is not about shutting your heart off, but about discerning where your energy truly makes a difference. Psychologists often recommend a practice known as selective empathy, focusing your emotional investment on areas where genuine help is possible, rather than spreading yourself thin across endless suffering. This preserves your mental health while maintaining your capacity for kindness. Just as you cannot pour from an empty cup, you cannot sustain empathy when your own spirit is drained. Machiavelli's insight remains startlingly relevant. Compassion is sacred, but sacred things must be protected. Use your empathy wisely, where it nurtures growth, not depletion. True strength lies not in how much pain you absorb, but in how effectively you transform understanding into action without losing yourself in the process. In a world overflowing with emotional noise, conserving your empathy is not coldness, it's wisdom. Number 5, the strength of selective morality. Machiavelli's insight that those who truly succeed blend morality with pragmatism is one of the most misunderstood yet profoundly realistic ideas in human psychology and leadership. Contrary to his reputation as a cynical manipulator, Machiavelli never advocated for immorality. He called for intelligence in the use of morality. He understood that virtue, when applied without awareness of human nature, can make even the noblest person vulnerable to exploitation. What he proposed was not deceit, but discernment, the ability to act wisely within imperfect circumstances. This perspective mirrors what modern psychology calls situational intelligence, the capacity to adjust one's behavior, tone, and moral approach depending on the social or emotional landscape, without betraying one's core values. For example, a good leader might choose silence over immediate confrontation, not because they lack courage, but because they recognize timing as part of wisdom. In emotional intelligence studies, this aligns with the concept of response modulation, the deliberate choice to regulate emotional expression to achieve a better long-term outcome. Machiavelli saw that restraint, when used intentionally, could be more powerful than reaction. He believed that success requires a moral flexibility that adapts to context while keeping one's integrity intact. Modern behavioral science agrees. Adaptability and empathy are among the strongest predictors of success in leadership and relationships. In today's world, we see this principle at play everywhere, from diplomacy to business negotiations to personal relationships. People who rigidly cling to ideals without understanding the environment often suffer unnecessary losses, while those who know when to speak, when to wait, and when to act tend to navigate life's complexities with greater grace. This does not mean compromising ethics. It means understanding that ethics, too, operate within the reality of human imperfection. Just as a sailor adjusts his sails to the wind, a wise person adjusts their actions to circumstances without abandoning their direction. Ultimately, Machiavelli's message remains timeless. Discernment is not weakness, it is strength refined by experience. Blending morality with pragmatism allows one to remain kind without being naive, strong without being ruthless, and wise without being detached. It's the art of walking through a flawed world with both your heart and your mind intact, a balance that defines not only successful leaders, but also evolved human beings. Number 6, the liberation of conscious goodness. Finally, Machiavelli's hidden truth wasn't to reject goodness, but to upgrade it. To choose goodness consciously, even after seeing the darkness of human nature, is a higher form of strength. It's not innocence, its mastery. Machiavelli, often misread as an advocate for deceit and manipulation, was in fact a realist who sought to understand the complex machinery of human behavior. In The Prince, he didn't glorify cruelty or corruption. He revealed that moral purity without wisdom could be dangerous in a corrupt world. His writings reflected a brutal but essential truth. Goodness, when blind to the realities of power, becomes a liability. But goodness, when informed by awareness, becomes unshakable. This distinction lies at the heart of what many miss about his philosophy. Machiavelli didn't despise virtue. He warned against naivete. He saw that those who cling to idealism without discernment are often exploited by those who understand the darker impulses driving society. When we look through a psychological lens, this idea parallels the concept of moral maturity. Developmental psychology suggests that true moral strength doesn't arise from blindly following rules, but from understanding why they exist and when to apply them with wisdom. The highest form of goodness isn't reactive, it's intentional. It means you've seen manipulation, betrayal, and hypocrisy, yet you still choose integrity, not because it's easy, but because it's right. In modern terms, this echoes emotional intelligence, the ability to remain kind without being naive, compassionate without being weak, and forgiving without losing self-respect. It's the art of balancing empathy with discernment and heart with strategy. In practical life, this upgraded goodness shows up in small but powerful ways. The leader who enforces fairness even when it's unpopular. The friend who sets boundaries out of love, not resentment. The individual who stays honest in a world where lies are profitable. These people are not innocent. They are aware. They know the cost of being good and accept it. They embody the truth Machiavelli hinted at, that wisdom and goodness are not enemies, they are partners. When joined together, they create what philosophers call practical virtue, a virtue that survives in reality, not just in theory. So when you understand the cost of goodness and choose it anyway, your virtue becomes power, not weakness. You are no longer good because you're blind to evil. You're good because you've seen evil and still refuse to become it. That's not softness, that's sovereignty. Machiavelli's hidden message, stripped of cynicism, is this: true power belongs not to the manipulative, but to the conscious. Those who master both light and shadow can navigate life with clarity. They are not ruled by deceit or fear. They rule themselves. And that is the ultimate expression of strength. Machiavelli's message was never an invitation to abandon morality, but a challenge to refine it. His insight suggests that true goodness isn't naive. It's intelligent, perceptive, and adaptable. In a world where manipulation often overshadows virtue, wisdom becomes the armor that protects purity. Real goodness, then, isn't blind sacrifice, but conscious strength, where kindness walks hand in hand with discernment, ensuring that compassion endures even amidst deception.